So a day or so ago, I hopped in a Commerce Township, Michigan Facebook group full of current and past residents asking about what's good and bad about living in Commerce, and this is what they had to say. I love asking residents of an area this question because it's always blunt and right to the point, and there's definitely no sugarcoating. Before I jump into these comments, I want you to understand that these comments are based on experiences. So at the end of the day, take this input with a grain of salt, but keep it on the back burner of your mind as you continue to explore the city and several like this. If you find yourself enjoying the sounds of Commerce, Michigan, I'll link a video or two in the description to give you some additional insight. For those of you that are new here, my name is Andrew McManaman with Living in Michigan, a Michigan realtor helping people all over the world move to and from the fine state of Michigan. So if there's ever anything you need, I'm happy to be your go-to resource. Let's jump into these comments. So I asked this Commerce Township community Facebook page, as someone who lives in Commerce Township, what would you say are good and bad things about living there? And I got so many comments. So I'm going to read down the list of these and give you my thoughts too. So the first comment, and I would say the most common trend to these comments, is too many people and traffic these days, but the lake living is worth it. And the next comment is they need more restaurants and conveniences like drugstores, gas stations, etc. But there's a lot of people who replied to that comment saying all that stuff is just going to take away from the charm of the area, and I agree, just because it kind of gives that up north feeling, that cottagey feeling, like I said in my Commerce video that I made already, where you start adding things like that and start really stockpiling things that it loses that charm. And I think since the commute to nearby areas like White Lake, Waterford, Highland, you can hop on M5 and get places. I think you have the commute to get to all those different places to get to things like restaurants and conveniences and drugstores, etc. So, and a lot of people commenting on that just really supported that fact too, is just they don't want to lose that charm of Commerce. So another person said roads, they can't handle the pass through traffic. And some more replies on that is it's just so many expressway projects right now that it's hard to really say that this is a big con with Commerce, because there is literally construction on every single expressway, it seems like, and every back road you think you're going to take to avoid that, there's construction too. So it's absolutely a disaster right now. So this is probably the worst time to ask this question, because everyone's probably going to throw in here traffic. But as I mentioned a little bit too in the Commerce video, is they don't really have the infrastructure to be packing more people in there. There's new communities popping up everywhere, and it really can't handle that infrastructure. But they have, of course, the Martin Parkway roundabouts. They have that whole string of roundabouts that's really helping the flow of traffic. So there are things that they're putting in that are helping the traffic, but I think that they're going to have to make some big changes, some big improvements to help with the influx of people that are moving there. So the next comment, schools are great. The people who don't understand roundabouts are the worst things so far. So yeah, you really got to pay attention to those arrows on the ground and to figure out where you're going. I know it's difficult. I mean, I lived in Brighton, where the worst roundabout is in the whole wide world. So it's just, you got to get some practice on it. I mean, when I did my driver's license exam, it just, I had to do that for my test, so I got really acquainted with that really early on. So the next person says, too many homes and the infrastructure can't handle the number of vehicles on the roads. They can't stand it. So again, it's an infrastructure thing, and the traffic, I mean, with the projects going on, it's a complete disaster right now. And I've experienced this firsthand too. I was in Commerce not too long ago, and I was sitting there for quite some time. So if you need to pass through the area, if you're going to be living in the area soon while these construction projects are going on, definitely give yourself some time. And I would say it's more so on the way home than the way back, at least from the experience that I've had so far. Another person said, good, lakes, most people are nice. Bad, traffic, same boring restaurants that never change their menus, Kroger lines. So that's definitely something that's busy, and that's why a lot of the other people are commenting things like we need more stores, because everybody piles to that Kroger, and of course it makes for some long lines. But boring restaurants, I wouldn't say boring restaurants, I would just say there's not a huge variety of them. I wouldn't say they're necessarily boring, but I could see if you're living there and you're going to the same 3 or same 5, maybe you've went through the whole entire menu already, so I get that. In all caps, this person said, traffic sucks. And they said, was that my outside voice? So again, another complaint about the traffic. They have a lack of an upscale grocery store, more restaurants and better fast food places is something they're looking for. So I could see that. I mean, it's one of those things where Commerce doesn't have a designated downtown space, so you don't necessarily have that variety, but you don't really need a downtown to have variety. You just need the space to put all that variety. But with variety comes more businesses, comes more traffic, comes more people. So it's really one of those double-edged sword things. You either, if you stick to what it is now, where you have limited options, you kind of keep away from it feeling too busy, and you kind of keep that rural charm that I was talking about earlier, or you pile in all that variety and it's just a complete disaster. The next person is, not enough to do, not enough restaurants and shopping, no downtown, too many houses, traffic is getting bad, but it is peaceful and beautiful. So that's one of the things about Commerce, is it's like I've mentioned in my other video, is it's just, it feels like a getaway. It feels like up north. You have all the trees and things like that. And I met with the Commerce Township Parks and Recreational Department, and they just talked about, I didn't even know this, but all the things that they're doing to preserve a lot of the property. I mean, I feel like it's hundreds of acres, and I may be mistaken there, but it seemed like it was hundreds of acres that they were preserving, putting parks on, and just making it just more community centric. And I think that was just the coolest thing, sitting down and chatting with them, because a lot of people, when you see these new developments come up, you think, oh man, they're just getting rid of all these trees. That's what Commerce is known for, and they're taking everything away. But they're also, despite those developments, doing a really great job at trying to preserve all that too. And I think that's something that's highly looked over, because when we see the new construction popping up, we're like, okay, that's a complete disaster there. They're taking away trees. This is such an eyesore. But then you have this property over here that they're trying so hard to preserve, that's going unnoticed. So it's just something to keep in mind. So another person said, there are so many areas with uncared for buildings and land. Not many great restaurants, not a lot to do. And then someone commented on that and said, if you can't find something to do, you aren't trying. And it goes both ways, like I've said. So this person said, taxes are incredibly high. And there was a couple replies to that, and they said, I thought Commerce was one of the lowest in the tax rates in the area. And someone said, mine are high here, nothing can be done, the assessor informed me. Then the person commented back, we have lived in Commerce for 47 years. I know our taxes are cheaper than Novi and Wixom, and I believe Milford. Of course, your taxes are higher if you have a big house, different tax rates per city or township, and that's true. And Commerce is relatively cheaper. It's not on the low side by any means, but it is a lot cheaper compared to some of those areas that this person mentioned. So it really just depends. I know that's just a huge complaint right now, property taxes, especially in Michigan. I've made millions of videos, it feels like by now, about property taxes that I will link in the description too, just to give you some more insight on how we structure the taxes here, because that is one of the highest expenses that you're thinking about when you factor in homeownership, and people aren't budgeting for it correctly, and they're not calculating it correctly. So I have a lot of videos about doing just that I will link in the description, of course. So on the positive side, we have a great library, great parks, Proud Lake, walking, biking trails, Long's Orchard. So there is a lot of those recreational activities and a lot of amenities in that sense, where you do have the parks, you do have Proud Lake, you have the walking and biking trails. And it's one of the conversations I had with the Parks and Rec department, because they have so many things going on. I was like, wow, I'm actually kind of overwhelmed with all these options that you're throwing at me, because I never knew about it. And I've been in Commerce all the time. I pass through it all the time. I show clients houses there all the time. And I just never knew about all this stuff that they were doing to work towards, and to just, again, make it community centric, because they know that Commerce doesn't have a downtown, and downtowns usually give off that sense of bringing people together. And when you don't have a downtown, it can just feel a little sporadic and spread out, and not as community centric. So this is their way of really trying to bring the community together by really focusing on the Parks and Rec department and building new things, having new parks, having biking trails, and just having that social environment that is not going to be a downtown space. But they are working on some cool things. So they showed me their plans for this proposal that they're working on, and I think it's going to be really cool. So I'm sure there's going to be headlines for it soon enough. Another person said, no police presence, loud cars, people speeding down side streets to avoid traffic. I'm out. And that's, I would say that's a recent issue, I would say, just because you have people who aren't residents there, and you have these changing speed limit signs. And I had talked about it in a White Lake video that I made, that I got my first ever ticket in White Lake because they just had this sign that just went from 45 to 40 to 35, just like that. And I was just going maybe 5 over at that point when the signs changed, and I got pulled over for speeding. And it's similar in Commerce. The residents know the areas, they know the speed, and most people, of course, when you're trying to avoid traffic, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna take the side street, I'm gonna gun it, and I'm gonna get in front of everybody. So I could see that being an issue, but I feel like that could be an issue everywhere too. So this person said, lots of parks and lakes around. The traffic is just heavy all day though. This person, and of course we touched on that. No fruit markets. Don't have consistent sidewalks, especially on North End. Parks are so-so. So parks are being worked on, like I said. Sidewalks, I've noticed that too. Some of them end and start again, so there's not a consistent walk-through, but I think that's something that's going to be worked on. You have the communities coming. They're building new sidewalks. So I think it's just, Commerce is just a work in progress. I think it was just so used to just being this cottage getaway on the lake, little area that nobody knew about, and now there's people coming in, and it's like, oh shoot, now we have to offer things, we have to create a community now. And I think it's a game of catch up for them right now, but I don't think that they're too far off. I don't think it's like, okay, it's not gonna happen, let's just leave. I think it's a work in progress, and it's coming together. So this next person, the lakes area, the boating, the swimming, the beaches, alpine ski hill for winter sports, that's in White Lake, bike trails. We have always loved it here. Negatives are they are selling up all of our beautiful rural parts. So yeah, they're adding some more development, to say the least, but they, like I said, they're preserving a lot of it too. We need a Trader Joe's and a nice fruit market. Okay. Commerce Township got to take notes on the fruit markets. So this person said, used to be good. Multi Lakes Conservation Association still is. Roads are overcrowded with bleep that can't drive. That's fair. Next person, good. The lakes, the plentiful nature trails, and neighborly feel of the neighborhoods, at least around the lakes, and that is so true. And I talked about that in a Michigan Lifestyles video, is just how that community just comes together around the lake, and that you don't need a downtown for it. You just have this lake where everybody shares, of course, that common interest, and they work together to not only, and that's what the meetings are for too, the HOA meetings, and I've sat in some of myself too, where we're just trying to work together as a community to try and get this lake in the best possible condition. So the bad, maybe the traffic in the mornings and afternoons, if that's something that bothers you, but I don't find it to be extreme compared to other suburban areas. Increasing cost of living is another thing, and that's true. Like I said, it's switching. I think the generations are switching within Commerce, and there's an influx of new people, and the cost of living is increasing, but the traffic, of course. But my opinion too, I think it's just, like, again, this is the construction that's going on, but I would say they need to work on the infrastructure. Of course, we tackled that, but it is not as bad as a lot of the other areas. I can definitely say that with certainty. We need more full-time police officers and at least one more detective. I'd be curious what their thought is there. Too many cars on horse and buggy roads. Another person says traffic with an angry emoji face. They love the trees, my downsized home and street I live on. The building everywhere and backing up of traffic is not a good thing though. And then the next one is everybody wants to live in a more rural area, and when they all move there, what other results should they expect besides too much traffic and not enough infrastructure? So again, it's something we tackled on there. So what's really interesting though is I just went through every single comment on this post, and I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling, and that was the worst thing that they had to say about Commerce. And like I said at the beginning of this video, people are blunt. People don't hold anything back. They don't sugarcoat. And I'm sure you from experience have probably gone on a Facebook group or maybe even listed something for sale, and people just don't hold back. They'll call you names. They'll do this. They'll do that. And if traffic is the biggest complaint here, I mean, I would say that's a pretty good community that they don't, I mean, like I said, people don't hold back things. So I think if traffic's the biggest issue that they're complaining about, and of course the building, especially if you were a long-time resident and you saw Commerce with all the greenery and then you're just seeing all that kind of disappear, of course I could see how that could be an issue. But after reading off all of these comments, what are your thoughts about the area? If you're someone that lives in the area, what did they miss? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you're thinking about making the move to Michigan, don't miss out on signing up for my weekly Living in Michigan newsletter, where I touch on the housing market, provide lists of homes for sale, links to videos and articles, and tell personal stories that I will link in the description below for you. Thanks as always for watching. Till next time.